Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Supreme Court's verdict on Chief Minister Punjab that seems to have been propounded as a solution to both parties, them having said that the elections will now be held on 22nd July. The ramifications of the elections in the light of the by-polls for both the parties, what it can mean both for the PTI and the PMLN. Is it the best case scenario that PTI was looking for when they went to Supreme Court? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Hafiz Ehsan Khokhar, who's Advocate Supreme Court. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Yasir Latif Hamdani, who's also a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. Javed Rana, who is a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us. We will also have with us representatives from PTI and the PMLN a little later on. Hafiz Saab, we were already talking about, how do you look at this decision from the Supreme Court today? It certainly seems to be an attempt by the Supreme Court to come to a kind of middle ground, a solution for both parties, also to lay to rest the controversiality that has surrounded the Chief Minister election till date, isn't it?
Thank you so much. The political and constitutional crisis is being continued for the last around 3 months in Punjab. And there are so many incidents happens in Punjab. You have seen the turmoil in the Punjab Assembly House, and then you have seen in the last few days that there was 2 sessions, one by the Leader of the House in a hotel about the budget session, and then there was another session by the Speaker in the Provincial Assembly. And there has been also a litigation between the Speaker and then the PTI and then the ruling party. First, the Chief Minister went, the present Chief Minister, he approached the court about the election, and then he prayed for the taking oath, and there was denial on the oath. The matter went to the President and then went back, and then ultimately the oath was taken by the Speaker, National Assembly of Pakistan. All it has been unprecedented in the history of Pakistan, both on political and constitutional side. In that situation, we must say that it is the political immaturity, and there is a lack of.
But do you think it will lay to rest, so to speak, the kind of, like you have mentioned, the events leading up to this day? Do you think it will end, the confusion, the controversiality that has surrounded the election till now? With the PTI, of course, saying that, with not only saying, but there have been fights in the assembly. We've seen the unprecedented kind of environment within the assembly also.
There are 2 issues at the moment now. One is what is the legal and constitutional issue, and second is the political. The issue is, this is the first time as well in the history of Pakistan there is a political disconnect and communication between the opposition and the treasury sides. All the people who are in the government, around 12 political parties and groups, they are in the government, but on the other side there is no opposition in the National Assembly, and they are contesting in Punjab Assembly on different grounds. And they first went on the notifications of the reserved seats, and then multiple proceedings continued on. I only say on it, and today Supreme Court has also observed on it, that this is not a proper forum that you bring every day on different issues before us. You have 2 options. One, you decide your own within the parliament, and the second is you should accept on our decisions. And the Supreme Court of Pakistan, or the High Court, is not meant for the political issues, to resolve the political issues. And for the last 3-4 months, we are seeing it, that every political issue is being dragged into court, and then there is a judgment. If you get the judgment in your favor, you are saying that there is a rule of law.
There's an attempt to drag Supreme Court into the political foray,
system,
which
and if you don't, then you are criticizing the judgment and even about the conduct of the judges, and you went on the social media. So we should stop on that. And if today there is a proceeding, there was 3 sessions of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. It is also unprecedented that today there was the implementation day of the judgment of the Lahore High Court. The PTI filed the petition.
I want to talk more about that because you were earlier also talking about that. Let me go to Yasir with this. Yasir, there's also some opinion about the fact that, you know, this is a lead on from the interpretation of Article 62. Right? I mean, how would you considering, you know, the interpretation itself, the way it came out? Do you agree? You think that this is perhaps something that has followed from the way that it was interpreted by the Supreme Court?
Yes, I believe that is precisely what it is. 63A, the interpretation of 63A was what was the basis for the de-seating ultimately. So that particular judgment was landmark in terms of the interpretation of Article 63A. I personally think that that judgment, as you know, with all due respect to the Supreme Court, but I can exercise my rights as a citizen and express my point of view under Article 19. That judgment was an example of unnecessary activism on part of the Supreme Court, where there were, you know, 5 unelected judges decided to sit in judgment on who or what or how the people or in fact read into the Constitution something that wasn't already there.
And when we talk about political allegiance, I mean, of course, there's been debate about that. Is it really, unfettered? Is it really something you cannot change? Are you not allowed to change your political loyalty? You know, all of those questions are again something that the Constitution, like you said, you know, are being read into the Constitution. Let me come back to you and we talk more about that. Javed Sahab, what about pursuant to the scenario? We'll talk more about the legal side of things, but pursuant to now the judgment that has now come out, how do you look at the political scenario, the political landscape, considering the by-polls in particular, also in the light of the inflation that is right there in our faces? How do you expect the parties to do in these by-polls, because that will have its own, of course, ramifications on the election of the CM?
Well, in a broader picture, after losing hope first from the High Court and later on from the Supreme Court that the caretaker Chief Minister Buzdar would be restored, now the PTI is left with only one option, to see what happens on July 17 when the by-elections are held. Now, there are 2 narratives. One traditional narrative, we know that whichever the government is in power, they use its influence on the local administration and they manipulate general elections.
By-elections?
By-elections and just in this particular case, by-elections. So, how far the current administration in Punjab would be able to manipulate general elections? This is one side of the picture.
How far will they be, in your opinion?
I think they will, but the point is the scale of the public resentment against the PML governments is a huge. But will that actually trickle down to the polling? This is a bigger question. And now everybody...
And will PTI voter make it to the polling station? That's something...
I think certainly they will make it. PML and I think their activists are also active, but many within the PMLN people, they are not happy with their own government, because they came up with a slogan and they were having a long marches, protest over the price hike, and they have come up with the scale of the price hike which the previous government did in almost in 3 years and 8 months. They have done it within just a couple of months. So I think that public resentment is there, and there is a possibility that the PTI government may cash. But we have to also understand that many of the MPs, which originally they were independents, those votes didn't belong to the PTI. So if we go by the traditional approach, so that means the combination of PMLN vote and the combination of their own influence in those respective constituencies, they can make it to the PMLN. But we have to see the developing picture which is happening in Pakistan. I think these by-election results would be affected because of the price hike, and more importantly, the kind of the narrative that the former Prime Minister has built up, that he was victimized by the establishment and the USA together.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh with the same issues that you've just mentioned. Kaisar Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
जी कैसे साहब the public sentiment in the light of the rising inflation, do you think it will it is something to consider with regard to the bipoles at this time? How is the PMLN looking at this in particular? Because to deny it is one thing, but as far as inflation is concerned, the increase in fuel prices, all of those things are right there at this time. The economy, the purchasing power, all of those things are something that are a glaring reality at this time. Do you think that all of those things is something, are you ready, the PMLN is ready to, go to the fire polls with this reality? You think your voter will stand by you regardless of the situation at this time? How do you look at the bypolls?
Yes, you see, it is a very interesting situation. Of course, there is no doubt that the price hike is there. Price inflation is much higher than expected even. And it is more than it was in the period of PTI. But still, you see, I feel that people realize very well. People are very understanding this situation. They feel that this price hike is the reason is because of PTI. They were a government which did not have the experience, and because of their lack of ability of governing. So all this happened, and people fully realize that due to increase in import and export gap, and also increase in current account deficit, and also increase in the US dollar rate, all this price increase was there. And you see, there are two main parties. And also, you must understand that in elections, bipolar elections, most important thing is which government is conducting those elections. And
why, Kesar Saab, why is it so important which government is conducting these elections?
This is very important because of the psychology of the people. People feel that government is there, and the candidate from the government side will win it. This is the not psychology on this day. This is psychology since many, many decades. And people, mostly you see in bypolls, almost 90% the elections are won by the party who rules. And again, you see already PMLN is in power, and people feel that their elected candidate should get some position, should get some importance, and could be able to deliver. If they are, if the elected person is not from the government side, nothing can happen. We have been 3 years and 8 months in opposition. So I know that I could not deliver as I wished. We couldn't do anything, and people understand it. They even don't demand to us. It is a realistic thing, and you will come to know on 17th that most of the seats will be won by PMLN. Although you can say that PTI is a popular, they have a slogan, they feel that the price hike is too much. But I tell you that what happened, why it was like that. I have never witnessed a situation when government side members switched over to other side, to opposition. This is the first example in my own political life that the people who were in the government party, they switched over to party PMLN mostly on the plea that they will get next tickets for the next election. And also, it is very important to note.
Let me come back to you. I mean, there have recently been
one point I want to clarify. Small thing. I want to say that no one from opposition, either from PMLN or People Party, switched over to PTI, although they were in the government. We were in the opposition. So what was the reason? This was the sentiments of the people. People thought that PTI couldn't deliver, and next government will be from PMLN side in Punjab, and that's why the elected member from PTI switched over to PMLN, and no one even today. Now we are in the government. We were in the opposition. Neither any member at that time nor any member now has switched over to PTI. If they are popular, if anyone feels that they will be
Well,
winning
I don't
next
think that
election.
that's an option anymore, considering Article 63. I mean, let me come back to you. Is that an option anymore? Let me come back to you on that. But let me first go to Ibrahim Khan. Ji, Ibrahim Saab, I hope you've been listening to Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh Saab regarding the by-polls that are now expected in on the 17th of July. Are you hopeful of what's going to happen as far as the PTI candidates are concerned? Because of course these are those dissident candidates who then switched over. And according to Kaisar Saab, of course, he's saying that, the switch came from your party, which was, he's right to the extent that in government at the time, in parliament at the time, to leave that party and switch over to, at that time an uncertain future. All of that, considering all of that, how do you look at things now for the 22nd and 17th?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I was trying to concentrate on what Sheikh Saab was saying. He really had a hard time trying to put things together. I mean, his words could not really support his heart or his mind.
Yeah.
I mean, considering these 17th or 22nd, I mean, it's not the issue. The issue actually started from the 10th of April, where, I mean, an elected government was thrown out of power, being even in the majority, by a group of people. And it was a sheer violation of Article 69A, where it clearly states that any proceeding of the National Assembly cannot be challenged in any
Ibrahim Saab, can you hear me?
court of law.
Ji.
And even to the extent of intervening, that even trying to tell and basically give an instruction like to hold the assembly session on such and such date, and then the whole process is like as clear to 220 million people of Pakistan.
But Ibrahim Saab, now what do you expect as a part of the PTI? What do you expect from the by-polls on the 17th? Whatever happened has happened. Whatever has proceeded.
I think in these 2.5 months, the PMLN's deliverance has been literally mounted to zero. They have, brought the economy down, while IMF and all the other financial institutions have confirmed that the GDP rate had gone up to 6%. We had the highest export in the history of Pakistan, $33 billion. And had the highest, remittances, $31 billion. And we had the tax collection of around 6,000 billion, which was like, during their tenure was like 3,800 billion, which we upgraded to, our tax collection was so that much better. That we went on the broader taxation and brought more people into the tax system instead of just going into taxing right and left and bringing the whole economy down. And your basic question is like what's going to happen on the 27th? I see a clear-cut majority. I mean, if anyone.
What about the factor which, according to Kaisar Saab is relying on? He's saying that one, this is a by-election, and of course. Ibrahim Saab?
The by-elections, I am giving you my prediction like we will win by 90% because the way they have brought down the economy and the price hike and inflation and the way they have handled things, people are not happy with them at all. I mean, they were not happy with 150 rupees per liter, and now they have already gone to 250 rupees per liter gasoline prices. And in case of diesel, they have
let's
even
talk about that in a second. Let me go to Javed Saab. Javed Saab, you were shaking your head. I was noticing when Kaisi Saab was talking about the fact that by polls and the effect of the fact that, of course, you know, there is a certain, I mean, one has to, the government does gain a little bit from being in power at the time, you know, whichever government is there as far as the by polls are concerned. That's a certain reality. But do you think Kaisi Saab is putting too much, you know, by
I think
it? How do you
he made a very controversial point, and probably he didn't realize that those many or MPs who switch over their loyalties, it's a hugely controversial. It's not legally and particularly morally acceptable.
Okay.
And he was still frozen there, that perhaps it was a resentment of those party members against the PTI. I don't think. They, unfortunately, in Pakistan's politics, regardless of which political party it may be, in the past and recently we have seen that they switch over their loyalties for petty political gains. And I don't want to get into those allegations of how their palms were greased, regardless of
Because
those
those
factors.
are still allegations.
Those were still allegations. But a member who has been elected on a party ticket of one particular party, he is switching over his loyalty. That doesn't mean he is unhappy with that party. The real reason is that he thinks that establishment has switched over loyalty to the PMLN, so therefore it will be the next party to win the general elections. These are the layers of immoralities, and we should not take credit for the immoral things.
Yasir,
Yeah, I completely disagree.
I can see
must
that.
add.
That's why I want you to give.
Yes. In terms of what or how the loyalties change, I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to venture guess. However, what happened in Pakistani politics, and you can pick up politics as far back as 1936 when there's the very first elections in Punjab.
Ji.
All parties win over electables. So to say that they've won over because, or they've won because of party vote is an exaggeration.
Okay.
It's usually not the party, it's the electable. Secondly, the question of changing
So when we say that the PTI amassed electables under their belt, you know, whether anybody helped them do it or not, the point is, you know, that was also a reality as far as their making government was concerned. And as is, like you're saying, with all political parties.
Absolutely. There's no political party that's immune from this. Secondly, this entire idea that somehow floor crossing or vote of no confidence, for example, is somehow morally reprehensible. I personally disagree with the language of Article 63A of the Constitution, and then, of course, the interpretation that was given by the Supreme Court. I believe that the idea that there's a Prime Minister who's sitting in the Parliament, he's an executive in the Parliament, the only way you're going to dislodge a unpopular Prime Minister is through changing of loyalties, through floor crossing.
My
And
question is it such an inherent right? Is it such an, I'm going to go to Hafiz Saab with this also, but is it so wrong to switch your loyalties? Are you for life attached to one political party? I mean, just as a question of legal thought, or, you know, it interests me a great deal. Is it something you can never switch?
Absolutely not.
Inalienable right, so to speak. You know, a party has bought your loyalty and they will
party
not.
cannot.
Resign and then
No,
can switch over.
I'll just give you an example. I mean, you know, one of the many hats that I wear is that of biographer of Mr. Jinnah.
Did Mr. Jinnah not say that he was early at kindergarten also when somebody asked him?
Exactly. So he switched, and he was a member of the Legislative Assembly from Bombay, and he switched from Congress to Muslim League while he was still in office. So
And he was asked why wasn't he at earlier I mean, I just find that very interesting that, you know, a man of Mr. Jinnah's caliber could do it.
And integrity, and integrity. So this floor crossing, it's part of parliamentary practice anywhere in the world. It's done in Australia, it's done in Canada, and it's done in the mother of all democracies, parliamentary democracies, Great Britain as well. So this entire idea, this comes from, and this obsession with stopping floor crossing is a very uniquely South Asian thing. India did it with its 10th schedule to the constitution. Then Bangladesh pretty much outlawed it with Article 70, I think, of their constitution. And then Pakistan went ahead and did this. I think this happens only because I believe that it is an inherent, inalienable freedom of expression and freedom of association right of an individual member in a parliamentary democracy to change his loyalty and move towards another camp or move from the treasury benches to the opposition.
Javed Saab completely disagrees, and I will go to him. But first, Hafiz Saab, what's your opinion on this? I mean, as far as this right is concerned, is it so wrong? And then attributing, you know, as far as our media is concerned, you know, lists were given out which were completely, in a lot of cases, I know personally, wrong. You know, of figures which were given to individuals who were asked to change loyalties and all of those things. So there's a lot that has happened in this recent history also. And the question is, are we really going to be dictated by this, or are we going to move forward and let people, you know, now of course, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, they have spoken. So what's your, you know, opinion on it?
There is two aspects of this case. One is the political and the second is the constitution. In constitution, there is a clear provision that in 4 situations, the members has to obey the instructions of the parliamentary party, the head of the parliamentary party, and definitely the head of the party as well. And one of the instruction included therein the vote of no confidence and the vote of confidence, the money bill, or the constitutional amendments. So the spirit of the constitution is that in 4 situations it affects the composition of the government.
Right.
So as far as the judgment of the Supreme Court, it is as per law and as per the spirit of the constitution.
Okay.
What happened in future in now to the Supreme Court? Now the Supreme Court has said in the judgment that those members who dissented from the instructions of the parliamentary party, their votes would not be counted. So meaning thereby in future, no one dare to cast the vote because there is a consequence as well. The Supreme Court has gone a further step. The second point is the political. In any political culture like Pakistan, we should curb the horse trading. We should curb the malpractices. We should curb the change.
Of course, but that is if they are there.
The change of the parties. The change of the parties, and what happened because of that. Now,
but why the change in the parties? Okay, we should curb horse trading. Okay, we should curb, you know, buying of votes, the corrupt practices, all of those things. But why changing of loyalties based on, for example, your disagreement with, you know, your party head, or the way that the party is being steered, or the way that it is being directed, you know, at a certain time? Why can you not then change?
Why this is happening in the present situation, that those members who are deserted from National Assembly, from PTI to other side, it changed the composition, and change the compositions means the PTI is out of government. And in Punjab, those members from the PTI, they joined the other party, and the composition converted into the CM has lost, and he has to resign. And there was a new CM, and something
and a lot
is going
will,
on.
of course, you know, that is what happened. But let me go to Kaisi Saab. I'll come back to you. Kaisi Saab, as far as the PMLN is concerned at this time, as far as you know, the economy is concerned at this time, with your background, as far as the situation is concerned, what about the ramifications of the economy? And you know, I know that you've said earlier on that you think your voter understands. But in terms of the time that now, you know, the government has taken 2.5-3 months, and the changes that you have made now, are we likely to expect more changes? Are you expecting the people and your voter to be more patient, of course, with regard to you know, the devaluation that's happened, the overall inflation that's happened? What kind of time frame are we looking at? Because, you know, of course, the Prime Minister also offered an economic charter, but considering the scenario at this time, that doesn't seem to, you know, be anything, you know, happening at all.
Yeah, very important point you raised. You see, actually, of course, the economy is in bad shape. We are trying our best, but up to now, in last about 3 months, we couldn't make the situation better. And even next quarter or 6 months, I don't feel that economy will improve a lot. But people understand it is because of the incompetent policies and totally unawareness about the market situation by the PTI. And
But
that's
Ibrahim
why
Saab is saying they left the economy in such a great place.
you see, Mr. Ibrahim is my very good friend, but I tell you, the figures he mentioned, he said that exports are increased. They are only seeing one side of the picture. Exports, of course, increased, but import increased 3 times more than import increased, and the overall deficit of import and export, these are the facts. We must realize the overall difference between import and export went up to around $40 billion, which is the highest ever in Pakistan. Then again, he mentioned that the revenue improved. Of course, revenue improved up to FBR revenue went 6,100 billion now. The figures being given in June. But again, the expenditures were much more because only 4,000, more than 4,000 billion rupees was the interest we had to pay on the loans. More and more loans were accumulated, and then overall deficit, fiscal deficit was 5,600 billion. Revenue improved, but expenditures improved much more, and then 5,600 billion is the deficit. Now we were earlier we were discussing about the switchover of the people and prospects of next election. I tell you frankly, people understand that only PMLN improved the economy in last tenure between 2013 and 18. And I can tell you that morality is one thing. We can discuss morality, that is another topic. But as the electable are concerned, most influential position is of electables. Up to now, in Pakistan, parties have not been so strengthened that only on party basis the people could win. And I can tell you now, this is only prediction. Now the situation is with you. Inflation is so high, prices are increasing. On 17th, the election is there, and we feel that about 70% of the seats, 60 to 70% of the seats will be won by PMLN. And then again, I tell you, in Karachi last election in 2018, PTI won 14 seats. But this recent election of by-election, even they could not have any candidate to contest there. So, and no one, the people are so fed up with these elections that they are not turning up. Only 10% of the votes were casted. So I mean that the ground reality is different. You can talk morality, you can discuss those things, legal matters you can discuss, but the people are very much in favor of PMLN. They have confidence on PMLN, and they also the local government in the center and in provinces is with them, and that's why people feel that our problems would be resolved by the MNA or MPA who will be from the government side and opposition side. Opposition side.
Javed Saab, you were hearing Kaisar Saab. You know, do you agree? You think that as far as, you know, Kaisar Saab is not denying, I think that one has to give him credit for the fact that he's not denying the situation at this time. He's not denying the inflation, he's not denying the price hike, but he's saying that in spite of all those realities, rather because of them, he's saying that there is a confidence that the voter has that only the PMLN can take them out of this mess. They realize the mess was made by the PTI and that therefore they will support the PMLN.
I think if you talk of 3 months back, 4 months back, before the PMLN governments in Islamabad. What he's saying now, that could have made sense then.
Okay.
But now the impression have changed.
Okay.
Shabashi was projected as somebody who works hard, somebody who's a very good administrator. But I think during last couple of months, we have seen it the other way around.
But what were they expecting, Shahbaz Sharif Saab to come and wave a magic wand and the economy to change? You think people were expecting that? I mean, even if...
Just imagine a scenario, had the previous government not toppled, the political, it is uncertain, political uncertainty because of which the economy was collapsed. The dollar was at 179 before the no confidence motion.
But that is what you are saying. As far as Kaisar is saying, he's saying that it is a PTI and solely PTI that is responsible for the state of the economy the way that it is today. The rebates, the subsidies, all of those, that argument
I
is...
think both parties have been accusing each other, but I think one of the leading reasons is the Ukraine war, because of which there is high gasoline prices, and whichever the government may be, they will have to raise it. But I think had the previous government not removed, the situation would have been bad, but not the worst. Just look at the scale of the unprecedented price hike. The 250 rupees per litre petrol. What does it mean for a motorcyclist?
Well, we will know, of course, very soon as far as the bipolls are concerned.
My understanding is that I think we are not living in 90s era. The situation is changing. We have now a new generation. I think there may be setback for the PMLN. This is my understanding.
You don't think that it will be handled or influenced as much as it could be in the past?
The PMLN is obviously would influence. It has been very much expert in manipulating by-elections and in the past general elections through the forces that matters. But I think this time around, again, all eyes would be on these 20 seats. It would not be that easy for the PMLN to manipulate the by-elections. Situation is going to be different. And if people come up in a big turnout, that means even if there are manipulations in the elections, that will be very difficult to handle for the local administration. But again, going by the traditional mindset that we
Don't
always...
you think the local administration would probably be a little confused also, considering the scenario at this time? Overall...
But PMLN has got the loyalist in the administration, and I think they will go to the last resort to deliver whatever they can do in given situation. But it's going to be very difficult for PMLN to manage these elections. But remember, no political party in Pakistan, including PTI, they believes in fair and transparent elections. PTI government did the similar things. I think I would say in a bad manner.
Because
they were indulging in rigging
yes.
in Sialkot and Daska. So now they will talk about
it. Yes, and then also there has been all this talk of neutrality and not neutrality, and Yasir, overall that also has been unfortunate. But it's the way that we've dragged institutions into the political foray is perhaps unprecedented also.
The way they've been brought in and made controversial is definitely, it's very regrettable. We're talking about institutions that are entrusted with national security. And I mean, I'm not saying that they're exempt from the responsibility themselves. There is a history and a context.
Yes.
However, the way they've been brought in is very regrettable. And I feel that if this continues, there's going to be a general lack of confidence in all state institutions, and that's going to be a problem. Now, coming back to sort of the question of these 20 seats, that's a very interesting one. I believe that if these are electables, they are going to go wherever they'll be asked to go. That's just, there's no such thing as neutrality in Pakistan, unfortunately.
But they're already going there. In that sense, they would probably be contesting on the PMLN ticket.
They probably will, yes.
But whether they,
they'll win or not, that's the question, right? But I believe that they will win.
So you're saying there are assurances there of some sort,
yes,
which are making them flip sides or choose sides or whatever
absolutely.
the case. But do they have an option? That's also another interesting thing, right? After 63A and after them having, descended, so to speak, from PTI, the only option would then be the PMLN.
It is, and that's what they're going to do. Now, we all know that it's according to the Biradari vote that ultimately the cookie crumbles, as it were. And I feel that as far as PMLN is concerned, their government is concerned, they've come in, and I'm no supporter of PMLN, I must add as a disclaimer here, but they've come in and they've realized that they have to make some, or they take some tough decisions. And it's not so, I know a couple of ministers that I've had the opportunity of having an exchange of views, and from what I can see, PMLN is pretty much ready not to win the elections.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, this is what we have to do for the country, and we're going to go ahead, and at least that's the impression that they're giving off.
Before I go to Hafiz Sahab, Kaise Sahab, are you that noble? Are you ready to you know, have you looked at these polls? Do you agree with what Yasir is saying? I think that's a very noble take on, you know, the overall scenario, and for you to at this time acknowledge, and you have acknowledged the difficulty that there is as far as economy is concerned, and then knowing that you will probably, you know, maybe necessarily have to take a hit as far as these polls are concerned. Kaise Sahab? I think he's not there. Ji, Hafiz Sahab. Do you agree? You think that this is
ultimately the voters will decide. One party saying they will win, the second party saying they will win, and we keep looking and seeing the statements of all the political parties. One political,
and whoever wins, the other party will say that they were supported by
one political party came into power. They said this is the fault of the previous government. Then the next government come, they will say this is the fault of the previous government. Then the next. Now there are three issues. I am not the expert of the economy, but Pakistan has involved in three major problems. Number one is the dollar parity. We unnecessarily dragged our currencies in devaluations, which should not be happened. Number two, unnecessary reliance on import, because it is a 220 million populations. So almost 70% items of our import is the essential items, like our petrol, like our pesticides, like our the cooking oil, something like that. And the third most important thing is we had not worked on our manufacturing sides. We had not worked on the export side. So this is the problem.
But Hafiz Sahab, it's not one. I mean, wouldn't you say that when Shehbaz Sharif comes out and talks about an economic charter, which was also earlier talked about, you know, it is one of those realities that perhaps our politicians of that acumen, that kind of stature accept that it is needed, it is the order of the day. But the point is, when will we put our politics aside and move forward and accept that, and, you know, say that, like Yasir is saying, if PMLN is indeed willing to look at, you know, the fact that they have to make tough decisions and therefore take the political fallout because of them, then if we have that kind of reaction coming from across the board, all political parties, perhaps we would be in a much better position.
On the other side, say the one party saying that there was increase in exports, there was increase in remittances, and there was increase in the GDP growth. See, what happened in 2 or 3 months? See, that all is going into the decline. The primarily issue is there is a debt burden on our country, and the second is the dollar parity. IMF keeps saying even in 2004 when the Shaukat Aziz was there, they were asking for the dollar for 100 rupees. If we talk about the dollars in the previous regime like 2004 when it was a 56 rupees per dollar, and if 1.4 at the moment $250 if you go on is, so the price would be the 70 or 80 rupees per meter. So this is the issue of the dollar parity issues. The second is issues we don't have the stable economies. Right. We have a very good project on the CPEC side. We didn't work on it. We should be on that side. We should work on this economic zones as well. We should work on the exports. We should work on the IT export. It is a multi-pronged and simultaneous strategy to work on it. And the most important is the justice, the law, the governance. All are the basic items, the education, the social sector reforms. Until we will not do on these sides, the reforms on the side, the problem would be continuous, and we will be listening in another 10 years, that's happened, and it would not be interest of our country and for the interest of our generation.
That's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us, Hafiz Ehsan Khokhar Sahab. Thank you for joining us. Yasir Lateef Hamdani, thank you for being with us. Javed Rana Saab, thank you for joining us. Ibrahim Khan Saab, thank you for joining us today. Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh, thank you for being with us. Of course, one, as far as our own failings in terms of our economic failures to date are concerned, perhaps if we, all political parties can put aside their politics, so to speak, in the larger interests of economy, and acknowledge, that they need to come together, which is something that I say again and again, in the interest of economy. Perhaps we will see the kind of results as a nation that we want to see. And then we can move towards large-scale reform, because we see that, a lot of talk about reform was also made earlier on, and that didn't happen. Whether one can attribute it to numbers or not, the overall situation does dictate there to be an economic charter of sorts in the larger interest of the country, of the economy, regardless of the politics and political affiliations. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.